I'm Cameron.
Today we're going to be talking about Ida B. Wells.
And how she fought for racial discrimination, women's rights, and civil rights.
Nutcrackers were an industry and journalists who told people what was going on in the world at that time. Ida B. Wells was one of the journalists. She was one of the most well-known journalists in the United States. She was born in Mississippi in 1862. She is specifically known for her piece of justice for colored people. Women Nutcrackers were some of the most important journalists, like Ida Tarbell and Ida B. Wells. Wells also fought racial discrimination. She was one of the first to bring legal action against the railroads because of discrimination.
Ida B. Wells was a journalist, researcher, and activist in the early 19th and early 20th century. Wrote and exposed about white mob violence in 1892. As a result, she was driven out of Memphis, her press burned down, and threats to her life forced her to move to Chicago, Illinois. Despite being unpopular and a nutcracker during her time, her work helped improve education, women's rights, and civil rights.
When Wells was forced out of Memphis because of the threats, she had to move to Chicago, and she did great things for education, civil rights, and women's rights. Ida B. Wells had a rough life when she was younger, but she provided for herself and her siblings. On Biography.com, it states Ida B. Wells was born in Holly Springs, Mississippi on July 16, 1862. She was born into slavery during the Civil War. Wells was the oldest daughter of James and Lizzie Wells. This shows that she is responsible and trustworthy, and people shouldn't think that she is a bad person since she is black. In the same article, it states Wells Barnett enrolled at Rusk College, but she was expelled when she started a dispute with the university president. It was at Shaw University that Wells received her early schooling. This shows that she was smart and could do multiple things, and she should not be doubted. Same article, it states at the age of 16, she had to drop out when tragic struck her family. Both of her parents and one of her siblings died in the yellow fever outbreak, leaving Wells to care for her other siblings. She convinced a nearby country school admissions that she was 18 and landed a job as a teacher. This shows that she can take action and be responsible and take care of others. This is important since women can be the same as men, and it is important to be yourself and not let people.
Even though Ida's parents died from yellow fever, she was still working hard to stop segregation, and she shows it by becoming a teacher in black-only schools and becoming a vocal critic for these schools. She was fired from her job for doing this, but never stopped writing and speaking out against it. One quote from Ida stated, "One had better die fighting against injustice than to die like a..." While working as a journalist and publisher, Wells also held a position as a teacher in segregated public schools in Memphis. She became a vocal critic of the conditions of black-only schools in the city. In 1991, she was fired from her job for these attacks. She championed another cause after the murder of a friend and his two businesses.
In 1913, Wells Barnett traveled to the first suffrage parade in Washington, D.C., an event organized by the National American Women's Suffrage Association. On the day of the parade, Wells Barnett and 6 other black women arrived to march with the Illinois delegation, but were immediately advised as women of color to march in the back, so as to not upset the Southern delegates. Wells Barnett refused, arguing either I go with you or not at all.
I'm not taking the stand because I personally wish for recognition. I'm doing it for the future benefit of my whole race. She helped block the establishment of segregated schools in Chicago. In 1895, in Chicago, she married attorney Ferdinand Lee Barnett, who founded and edited Chicago's Conservators, the city's first black newspaper. The couple had 3 children. Although Ida Wells Barnett tried to retire from public life to raise her children, she soon returned to her campaign for equal rights. In 1906, she joined with William E. Du Bois to promote the Niagara Falls movement, in a group which advocated full civil rights for blacks. In 1909, Wells Barnett helped form the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Ida B. Wells helped stop segregation from schools, or at least was the part of the fight that helped stop discrimination and segregation in the city. Later in time, she married Ferdinand Lee Barnett, who was an editor for the city's first black newspaper. They somewhat had a normal life, but then she retired to raise her children. She soon returned again, fighting to stop segregation so blacks could live a normal life like the whites. She also helped William E. Du Bois in a movement for civil rights for the benefit of blacks.
Ida B. Wells was and is remembered as powerful, fierce, and amazing woman. She always fought for what is right, even if it could get her killed. She was a fighter and is loved by many for helping our world come to the point it is today. I believe she would love to see how people have come to peace and how she helped stop segregation and discrimination and somewhat bring our world to peace. She was a part of the fights, marches, and protests against segregation and discrimination. Today, we have houses and streets made for her, which show how amazing she is.
Learn about Ida's background and the journey she went through, all the protests and fights for what is right. Also, you learn about her fight to stop discrimination and segregation, how she did not do it for attention but for the future benefit of her people and others that did not have as much. Ida is remembered as a powerful, strong, and determined woman and will fight for what is right.
Ida B. Wells matters since she was an educator, a journalist, a feminist, a businesswoman, a newspaper owner, a public speaker, a suffrage, a civil rights activist, and a women's club leader. She was a founder of the NAACP, a founder of the National Association of Colored Women. Also inspired multiple women and encouraged them to speak out and fight for their rights.